Hi, my name is Zubin. Welcome to Leadership in HR. Today we have with us S. Raghavendra Rao, who is fondly called by the name Raghu. He heads Learning and Leadership Development in Siemens. So let us welcome Raghu to our show. Welcome, Raghu.
Thank you, Zubin.
Thank you so much for being part of our show. It's going to be a great learning experience for our audience.
Pleasure is mine.
So let us start by knowing a little bit about you, both from the perspective of work and maybe a little bit personally too.
As you rightly pointed out, people call me Raghu. I'm basically from Bangalore, and I've been in HR for over 2 decades now. All in HR. I've been in strategic HR predominantly, and I've worked for some of the world's best organizations like Volvo, ABB, Philips, and now Siemens. I've also been part of some of the most admired Indian companies like Tata's and Eicher and Arvind's.
Okay.
So I've been in HR all through. This is the first time in Siemens I'm doing a specialist role in learning and leadership development. I felt this is a fantastic learning opportunity for me to be in this role, because as head of HR of an organization, you really get an opportunity to work on end-to-end HR aspects. But when you are in a specialist role, this is the time you really get an opportunity to do an in-depth work. So there was an opportunity here. Learning and leadership is really a priority area for most of the CEOs. Today, if you ask me what keeps CEOs awake in any organization, there are 4 things. Human capital is one of the biggest challenges that CEOs face in any organization.
All right.
So I thought this is a fantastic opportunity for me to be in this role. So last 5 years I've been in learning and leadership development. It has been a fantastic learning so far.
Okay, great. And what about something that we can know about you as a person? What are your likes, dislikes, hobbies, etc.?
Oh yeah, I'm a keen dramatist. From the childhood days I've been into dramatics. I'm also into filmmaking. One of my hobbies is to conceptualize something and then work out a concept, and then I film it myself. Of course, I take the help of professionals in terms of photography, etc. But I'm basically into scripting and directing. That's my hobby. I also like research. In fact, my academics, I'm continuing my research with XLRI. I'm doing my fellowship in management there. I'm also a keen trainer and facilitator. I do a lot of training, both in-house, and whenever I get an opportunity, I also do this outside the organization.
Okay, great.
These are some of my
you seem to be a very multifaceted man.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Okay, great. So let's move into the topic that we're going to discuss today, which is never stop learning. So my first question to you is, why do you think, so your perception on why is it that people should never stop learning? And let us also focus a little bit on the HR domain.
This is a very, very fascinating topic as far as I'm concerned. Why I say that is, last week I was just going through the Conference Board report. Conference Board is a US based research organization, and they do business related research work. So for the year 2018, they spoke to about 2000 CEOs and C-suite executives globally. And then if you really go through the report, they summarize their research findings in terms of 2 parts. Part 1 is the CEO challenges, what keeps CEOs awake, and also some of the hot button issues, which are typically the short term issues that most of the C-suite executives are struggling with.
Okay.
And when you go through the report, some of the key insights that you get from these reports are, everybody is talking about new strategies, digital transformation, agility, they're talking about cultural transformations, they're talking about new business models, technology disruptions. What does all this mean to us? When you look around, there are a number of change that is taking place all around us, right? What is the way that people can really cope with these changes? This has always fascinated me. I think if you really have to cope with these changes, the only way is to keep yourself learning agile. You have to continuously learn. That's the only way that you can really keep coping with these, some of the changes that are happening. Today we are not even talking about changes, we are talking about transformation, disruptions.
Yes.
How does one really cope with these transformations, disruptions? The only way I think is by continuously learning. That is what really fascinates me. That's one aspect. The second aspect is, look at any organization. Whenever there is a change, what really happens in the organization? How do people react to these changes? One is, a typical response to a change is that a vast majority of the people, they will accept the change in some form or the other. What is the other one? Some percentage of people will always resist the change, right? They will resist. They will say, I don't like it, they don't want to understand it, they will ignore. Many different forms of resistance. So typically there will be acceptance or rejection or resistance of a change that is being introduced. But the real question here is there a third alternative? What is the third alternative? The third alternative is all about creating the change, driving the change. When you create the change, when you drive the change, what really happens is you are the pioneer. You become the leader. That's what really inspires me. I always wanted to be the leader. Leader not in terms of how many people really report into me. Are you the change driver? Are you the creator of the change? Are you really driving change? For that, you really have to continuously learn. That's what really inspires me.
Okay, great. So, since this really inspires you, and when you're talking about driving change itself, creating change, have you had an opportunity therefore, maybe if you can share one experience or one example from your work life where you did this successfully?
Oh yeah, there are plenty of them. If I speak about my current assignment with Siemens, where I'm heading learning and leadership development function, there are a number of interventions that we have come up with, which has really helped to transform the culture of Siemens. I can give you a number of examples. Initially when I came into this role, this was almost about 4.5 years back when I really took over, the organization was really going through a transformation. We had a new CEO, there was change of management, and he was really focusing on creating a customer-centric organization. When you're trying to create a customer-centric organization, what is the reason behind that? So when he took over as a CEO, he went around meeting some of the key customers, and we got some feedback from our customers. Some of them were positive, some of them were not so positive.
Okay.
Right? The positive responses were typically relating to the technology and the products that we have. Not so positive feedback was more about the cultural aspects, the attitudes of the people, the frontline people who are on a day-to-day basis interfacing with the customers. Now that was a mandate that was given to my team to drive the cultural transformation in the organization. So we had to come up with a number of interventions. The first one was driving the customer centricity. We came up with an intervention which covered about 8,000 people, and we have driven that intervention very successfully. And today I can tell you very proudly that we have been able to make some big difference to the organizational culture. But when we drove this particular initiative, intervention in the organization, that was our first venture. We learned a lot of lessons.
All right.
Based on that, we got a lot of insights about what else needs to change in the organization. How do we develop our talents? How do we create a high performance culture in the organization? How do we really create ownership culture in the organization? How do we develop our leaders? These are all some of the things that really came from the first intervention that we drove. We are constantly innovating and we are getting inspired by the kind of reactions and responses that we get from our people. So that's been a journey. It's never an event, it's a journey.
It's a journey,
so we are continuing to have that journey.
Okay, great. So Raghu, just to come out of the topic of discussion for a moment, we're going to move into our section called the rapid fire rounds. I'm going to ask you a few questions really fast, and you have to answer really fast, so you don't have time to think.
I will try.
Yeah, sure. So shall we start?
Yes.
Okay. If you were to force to leave India and relocate, which country would you choose?
US.
And why?
I think I love the atmosphere there, and opportunities there are very good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So which is your favorite holiday destination?
Switzerland.
Okay. And what attracts you there? You love the hills?
I love the hills, I love the mountains. The overall environment, the climate is beautiful.
How many cities in India have you visited?
Most of the metros I have visited. Some of the tier 2 cities also I have visited. I can't count them and tell you, but I have visited quite a few of them because
give
my
me
job takes me to different
You
cities.
can give me a number, maybe a ballpark figure kind of.
I must have visited 20-25 cities.
20-25 cities.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. And how much are you enjoying the role of being focused into learning and leadership development?
Very much. I'm completely immersed into this particular role because this is a job that has given me the maximum amount of satisfaction, because here you are able to relate to people, understand their issues, and you are also helping them to cope with the kind of changes that are happening in the organization. I have an opportunity to deal with people on a day-to-day basis. I interact with them, I listen to them, I understand the challenges that they go through. So this has been the most satisfying in my career.
Okay, one final question in the rapid fire round. Formals or casuals?
Formals.
Always?
Not always, but during weekdays because that's our organizational culture. But weekends I enjoy wearing casuals.
But you prefer to wear formals, is it? You feel more comfortable in formals?
I look more stylish in a formal.
That's a good reason.
Yeah.
Okay, great. You've done very well in the rapid fire round.
Thank you so much.
So let's move on to the final section of
Yeah.
our discussion today. And here is where we would like to get your suggestions. So if you're talking about never stop learning, and if you were to give some suggestions to young HR professionals,
Yeah.
How can people prepare themselves? What should they do that they should never stop learning?
I can only speak from my experience.
Yes,
I have
yes.
embraced a lifelong learning philosophy. What is lifelong learning? Just to decode this for the benefit of our audience, I would say lifelong learning is nothing but learning, unlearning, and relearning. It's a process, it's a cycle. Now, learning is easy, but unlearning is not so easy. I will have to kind of explain that a little bit more by giving you an anecdote. There was a cough, right? And her job was every day go from village A to village B. She would do that every day. One evening she felt not like grazing anymore, right? She stopped grazing half an hour earlier than any other day, and she was returning home. But then she said, look, if I am going back home now, I will reach half an hour early, and I don't want to do that. So let me take a detour, right? And she takes a detour, and she reaches home like any other day. There ends the story of the cough. Now see what happens after that. A dog comes. He has to go from village B to village A, but does not know the route. He looks at the footsteps of the cough, and then he takes the route. And then the story goes on. Now you have 25 sheep, they do the same thing. Then 50 men, they come, they do the same thing. Everybody is doing the same thing. What are they doing? They are just following the footsteps of the people who went through that route earlier.
Yeah.
So what is happening here? What do you see here? Nobody is questioning. Nobody is trying to understand, is there a better way, faster route to go from village B to village A? As a result of this, there is a lot of waste. The point that I am trying to make here is, why did these people follow the footsteps of the cough? Is cough at fault? I would say no, because the context for cough was different on that day at that point of time. She was not feeling like grazing, so she wanted to take a detour. But that was not the context for rest of the people who followed the cough, right?
Yeah.
So context for the cough on that day at that point of time was very different. So therefore, context is important. When the context changes, everything changes. Now based on the context, you have to ask yourself, am I really doing the right things? So therefore the question of relevance comes into picture. So the context and relevance are the two guiding principles that one can use to decide what should I learn, what should I unlearn, right? For example, if you are a student, you are moving from a college to a corporate. Your context yesterday was college and your context today is corporate. So therefore you can't behave the way you did when you were in the college, right? So therefore when the context changes, everything changes, and therefore the relevance. And you can keep these two guiding principles to unlearn something, right?
Yeah.
So learn, unlearn, and relearn. So these three things put together really becomes a lifelong learning philosophy. When you do this, you will really succeed in your career. There is a famous saying, they say learning agility. If you are able to develop this, that is the top predictor of your potential. Learning agility is the top predictor of your potential. It's the magic multiplier, right? It can really take your career to a different level. So that's why one has to constantly keep learning, unlearning and relearning.
Thank you so much for your advice, Raghu. And that I love the story because that really helps us understand what you're trying to tell us about context as such.
See, it's easy to tell people that you must unlearn, but then people don't know.
Right.
How do I unlearn? What do I unlearn? How much should I unlearn? Does that mean that all my experience that I have gained over a period of time has to be unlearned? No, you have to go for selective unlearning.
Yes.
What does not make sense in the current and the future context is what you need to unlearn, and you are the best judge. You have to make the decision, no one else can, right? And therefore, learning, unlearning, relearning should be your lifelong learning principle and philosophy. So that's what I have believed, and it has worked for me, and I hope it works for all of us.
It must, it should. Okay, so Raghu, I must thank you for being part of our program. Thank you for all your suggestions and sharing your experiences, and I hope we can again meet sometime and have another discussion.
Sure. Let me leave this with a last thought.
Yes.
Learning agility is something that can be used for future proofing against all the disruptions and the transformation that we are talking about. This can really future proof you, because we never know what is. Today we are doing a job, we don't know whether how this job is going to change tomorrow, and whether this job will disappear tomorrow, we don't know. And if you really have to remain employable, you have to remain learning agile.
Right.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you so much, Raghu.
Thank you.
So we were listening to Raghavendra Rao. Of course, we call him Raghu. I hope you've learned a lot from this discussion. If you have, please like and share this video. And until next time, goodbye.